Right now we have Kathryn, and she's going to do silicone molding and resin casting of small parts. Thanks, Kathryn.
Am I on? Okay, am I on? Can everybody hear me? Okay, cool. I'm not used to being mic'd. I do this every day of my life, but not with a microphone. So I'm doing silicone molding, resin casting, small parts. I'm sitting here thinking, not all of us have access to a 3D printer. Not all of us can actually do the CAD and the technical work required to use a 3D printer. But there are a lot of good ways to duplicate parts without it, and this is one of them. So what I'm going to talk about today, come on, wake up. So I'm talking a little bit about the materials that you need to buy and what to look for and what not to look for, because you're going to go to your craft store and you're going to see some things that will not work. But I can save money. You get what you pay for. I'm going to demo how to pour a silicone mold. So I've got all my stuff here. That's kind of the meat of the presentation, is how to make the mold. I'm going to talk a little bit about resin casting, and I'm going to do a kind of a fake casting demo, because resin is not something you do indoors. Resin stinks. Resin needs to be done outdoors or with plenty of ventilation and safety gear. And I'll answer as many questions as I can. I'm going to be here. I'm here all week. If you have other questions, feel free to grab me in the halls and say, "Hey, I was wondering." So that's where we're going. So like I said, first thing I'm going to talk about is how to make the mold. It's probably the part that people find the most intimidating. First thing you need is the rubber. You want to buy rubber. You do not want to go to Michael's or Joann's or Hobby Lobby. You're going to go to the craft section. You're going to see this little white can that says Cast and Craft Latex Mold Maker. And you're going to be like, hey, this is something I can get locally. It's going to be awesome. It is not awesome. It is not awesome because latex shrinks. And I'm going to pass some things around. These are, I learned how to do this as a costumer. I learned how to do this from guys who did garage kits, who made copies of mecha model kits from Japan. If you want something that's going to be the same size a week from now, a month from now, 6 months from now, you don't want to use latex. This is the Sculpey Positive I made. This is supposed to be an Man Arc Reactor. This is a latex mold I made of the Man Arc Reactor. I wasn't concerned about size, particularly for this project, but if you're making something that has to be to spec, that has to be to tolerance, which is going to be a thing with this, you want to be careful of this. If I try to put this back into this, you can see how much it shrunk. And I'm going to pass this around, so yeah. So you can see latex shrinks. So yay, it's so cheap.
And now, is that just as it cures, or
as it cures and over time?
Okay,
yeah.
So this will continue to shrink.
I think it'll continue to shrink.
Probably.
Well, that's about 1.5 years old.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's from a costume I did last Memorial Day. So that piece of latex is probably 1.5 years old. So these are all the ones I did for that costume, and they stick together, and they're kind of a pain in the butt, and I don't like them. So don't do that. Get actual 2-part silicone rubber. It comes in different makes. The two that I've used Umu, and I've used Copy Flex, which is what I'm going to use today. Some are food safe, some are not. I taught kids how to do this over the school year. We molded a glass bottle, and we did sugar casting, which is kind of the same thing. And the first thing the kids all said to me is, can we eat the sugar? And I said no, because we used Umu. Umu is not food. This is not a food safe rubber. You cannot eat it. The silicone is going to outgas weird chemicals. you can possibly get sick. If you want to do anything that you want to use food safe, I like Umu makes a food safe. I use Copyflex. The chef developed it, so I like it a lot. A couple things you want to pay attention to. The ratio, 1:1, which means equal parts of A and B. Most of them are going to come in 2 parts. These are going to be liquid until I mix them. And then the chemical reaction happens, and then it hardens. You can get 1:1 rubber. There are some craft rubbers where you'll get a tub of the rubber and a little thing of catalyst, and it'll be like a 1:10 or 10:1, or the ratio will be printed on the packaging. I like 1:1 because it's easiest to work with.
Is it 1:1 by volume?
I know the Copyflex works by weight. This works basically by Umu. We did by volume. So read the directions, basically. Because even when I order Copyflex, you order it by the weight, and there's like you fill it with, you do this thing with rice where you figure out how much you actually need to order. Umu is just mix the 2 bottles together. Careful measuring and mixing by scale. Use a scale. The place where people go wrong most often on this is that they don't measure. They have too much of A or too much of B, and their silicone never sets. Careful measuring and careful mixing. I'm going to show you the best way to mix this stuff to make sure that you get 100% mix. Because if you put A and B, but you don't mix all of A with B, there's a little core at the middle where it's better mixed. Again, it's going to set, but not going to set properly. The one thing you want to pay attention to is you're going to see the words pot time. That's how long you have between when A and B meet and when they start to set up. That's how long you have to work. I've seen pot times anywhere from 5 to 20 minutes. Once you mix this stuff, you are on the clock. It will harden in your mixing vessel, so make sure you are ready to go before you mix your rubber. Don't mix your rubber and be like, oh, I forgot to glue something down. Then yeah, you are now screwed. Unless your glue dries really fast, you are now screwed. So that's the first thing that you need. I like AB. Umu makes one, and then how long it sets you want to pay attention to too. There's an Umu that sets in about 90 minutes. That's what we used at school. I was really happy with it. This stuff takes about 4 hours, but again, this was developed by a chef for bakeries, for like Duff Goldman, for people who want to do like candy and chocolate and sugar, which is what I do with it. So because you cannot move it while it's setting. So if there's something, well, it has to set for 8 hours. Well, like put it outside and it's gonna rain. You are now screwed. What?
Get an umbrella.
Get an umbrella and stand there all night. Second most important thing you need to think about is how are you going to mold this? You have to contain this stuff. It is liquid. Legos are awesome for this with a few caveats. The higher up your stack of Legos is, the higher volume physics works. We did a bottle in a Lego box. It was 1 Lego thick, and it leaked all over everything because pressure happens at the bottom. Liquid pressure happens. Physics is that the kids got a practical physics lesson. It was kind of awesome. This one probably won't because I know how to build them. What's important, you should give yourself a 1/4 to a 1/2 inch around your parts. You don't want it to be right up next to your part. You want to have some rigid wall so that so that the silicone has something to set, or the resin rather, has something to set up against. And they need to be able to contain a liquid. So you have to be sealed. Legos, like I said, work great. If you're not sure about your Legos, or you've got a tall mold, clay works really well. We used Play-Doh in school because it's what we had, and it didn't really do a whole lot. If you really want to get serious about this, and we'll talk about two-part molds in a little bit, they make special clay that is designed for silicone molding that has no sulfur in it and doesn't react with the silicone. So if you really want to get into this, invest. And I don't own the clay, but I've used it, and it's something that you would want to invest in if you really want to get serious about this. The other one I've seen is people cut slabs of plexi. This one's held together with binder clips. I've also seen it done with hot glue. Because then when you're done, you take a hair dryer, you warm it up, and the hot glue peels right off the plexi. So I've seen people do reusable mold boxes with hot glue. I've also seen styrofoam cups, plastic cups, basically anything you can find that's going to contain a liquid, that's going to hold your piece, that's going to not have you waste. And the other thing you want to think of, you don't want to waste the rubber either. You don't want to have a teeny little keycap with like a huge box around it.
Does it produce heat as it cures?
What? The silicone does not.
Okay.
The resin does.
Okay.
Yeah.
Follow up to that. Is there any material that you would recommend not using with silicone because it either sticks or it reacts, or with resin, for instance, have a chemical reaction?
I'm not sure. I've only ever done plastic and Sculpey. So I'm sure that there are materials out there that will react poorly. But I've done ABS plastic Legos, I've done Sculpey, I've done resin casts of other resin casts, or silicone casts of other resin casts. I've done like the second and third generation copies of things. That's fun. So I'm sure they're out there. I have not encountered them. Silicone is very, very inert. That's kind of one of the nice things about it, is there's not a lot it does react with. There are some things, though, what it comes down to is affecting that chemical reaction. But that is, I can look that up, but that is something I've never run into, but I'm only doing limited here. Ooh, right. Bright light. I was talking about the clay. I'm going to demonstrate the most simple version of this. Teacher, I'm going to start at the bottom, scaffold it up. So I'm going to do a one-part mold, where I'm not doing anything weird. I'm just pouring it, letting it go, and it's done. If you want to make something where you want to cast all the 360 degrees around it, like a keycap or a joystick bay or a button or something, you would want to do a two-part mold, which is a little bit harder. So which is why, like I said, I don't have time to do everything. I could do an 8-hour workshop on this. Two-part molds. This is what a two-part mold looks like. You embed your piece in clay. You put the box around it. You put some. There's a chemical you can buy. It's called mold release. You spray it. You pour the silicone. You let it set. You turn the box over. You take it apart. You take it out. You turn it over. You put the box back together. And then you pour the other side with more release. That's what these are, keys, and you put little keys in it so that when you put it back together, it goes in the right way. Like I said, this is way, 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 way more complicated than I know how to do it, but it's not something I can demo in like 45 minutes. And again, sulfur-free is the most important thing. Don't just grab if you're going to seal the edges of a mold on the outside, yeah, you can get away with using your kids' Play-Doh, or you can make some Play-Doh in your kitchen, no problem. If you're actually going to be touching the working mold, make sure you're using the right sulfur-free molding clay. Some things that you're also going to need. Mixing containers. You need at least 2. And they need to be big enough. Ask me how I know this. How do I know this? Because I've gotten silicas, because I've mismeasured. Woo, there's silicone everywhere. Paint stir sticks. I forgot to get them, so I got some forks from Panda Express when I stopped for lunch the other day. You need something that you can throw out. Don't use your good silverware. Don't use silverware. You want this stuff to be mostly disposable, because you will see why I want to throw this out when I am done. If you want to do two-part molds, you need like acorn nuts or marbles for the keys. You need some release agent, which can be, if you go on Amazon and silicone release agent, it comes in a spray can. It's like $5. And like I said, a digital scale for measuring. I don't care if you're doing two-part, one-part, whatever. Scale, 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 scale. How does this work? First thing you do is you build your box. I have taken the liberty of doing this. So what I am going to make today is this for me. I'm going to make a mold to make Lego candies. Sweet, sweet, I know, it's awesome. What? So what I have done is I built a box, and you can see this box is about 3 or 4 Legos wide. And if you look at it, it's going to be up here for about 4 hours. You can swing up and look on it on the way out. If you look, what I have done is I have staggered all of the seams on my Legos. So so when I built the first box, I paid attention to where my seams were, and then the second half, so the outside of the box, and then building the box up, none of the seams line up. It's like laying flooring. You never want your joints to line up. You never want your seams to line up. That really helps with the leaking. The other thing that helps with the leaking is making you go more than 1 or 2 Legos wide. The wider it is, the more space, the more work the silicone has to do to run out, and the less it's going to run out. Having done this before, I know that the Copyflex is not going to. This is exactly what I did before to make. I have one already done to show you. So I know for a fact this is going to be okay. And if it's not, I'm going to look really stupid. The other thing you want to do is make sure that what you're going to mold is securely attached. Yeah, I think some of you who were here earlier saw me take the newspaper and wham, 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 wham on this. That's what I was doing. Because what's going to happen is once I pour this, I don't want these things to come detached and floating up. And they will. I was working with a guy, he was doing, did anybody play Warhammer 40K? A lot of Warhammer guys do this to dupe their miniatures, and his miniatures he did the same thing. He glued the bases to the bottom of like a styrofoam bowl. Some of the glue came undone, and his miniatures were floating in silicone. He had to cut the whole thing apart, and it was not a reusable mold. It was ugly. So make sure it's secure. Super glue. You can buy, I think you can buy glues, but I've seen hot glue works. Super glue works. If hot glue is more easy, again, hot glue is easier to remove. Don't use Elmer's glue. Don't use a glue. Don't use your kid's glue stick. Doesn't work. Use something that's really going to stick. But you also don't need to go out and buy contact cement or Gorilla Glue or anything like that. Super glue, hot glue, that kind of thing is going to work. And make sure it's good and sealed. So I got this ready to go. So I gotta remember how to get into these. So first thing I'm gonna do, take container number 1. I'm gonna put it on my scale, and I'm going to tear it out so that I'm not measuring the container as soon as my scale boots. My scale takes as long to boot as my laptop does. So I'm going to start with part A, and I'm going to remember how to get into part A. This stuff I order it online, so when he ships it, Chef Palazzo ships it really well sealed, which I appreciate. That's why I need a garbage can. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open part A, and it's going to. All right. So you can see it's very liquid. So I'm going to pour in, and if you can't see and you need to come forward, do what you got to do. I do the same thing I tell the kids, do what you got to do. So what I want to do is I want to get an accurate weight of what I'm putting in, because it's supposed to be 8 and 8 because I ordered a pound. 8 is not always going to come back out. It's probably going to be something more like 7.6, 7.7 ounces, just because, you know, getting every last little drop is kind of, you know, if you really hate your life and you want to do that, rock on. But I am going to scoop it with the fork and get as much out as I can. Yeah, I'm up to 6.8. I would like to at least get to 7. You don't really want to get this stuff on your hands. It is kind of a pain in the butt to get off your hands. Acetone, so cheap nail polish. Acetone is real good for getting uncured silicone off your hands. Cured silicone peels right off of everything. All right, so what I got going on here? Okay, so I'm up to 7.2, which is pretty good. 7.2, 7.3. Scrape, scrape. All right. Yeah, if I really. I just hate wasting anything because this, and so cost-wise, so I'll talk about that while I'm standing here scraping. Yeah, you know, this is not, it's not super expensive, but it's not super cheap either. This is $25 worth of silicone right here, which I just got on my arm. It's okay. I brought my nail polish remover. It's in my room. Okay, it's 7.5. That's good. So. My scale says 7.4. So I know that I want, so 7.4 plus 7.4 is 14.8. So I know that that's kind of what I'm shooting for when I put part B in. As soon as I get part B open, because now there's silicone on my hands and they're all slippery. I probably by rights should be wearing gloves, but I hate wearing them. I don't wear, I do tie-dye in my class with my fashion kids, and I don't wear gloves, and they're like, your hands are purple! I'm like, yeah, my hands are purple, so what? It'll wash. Kids get freaked out when you get dirty. It's so funny. Okay. What? Yeah, kids. Someone screw. So, and part B is a different color. It's orange. This is so you can help, this is so that it will kind of show you that you're properly mixed.
So the clock starts now?
Clock starts now.
Oh, that's so pretty.
Yep. And this stuff is, it's got a pot time about half an hour. This is, like I said, this is made for like professional chefs. So. And if you want to get within a couple of tenths. If if I get to 14, I'm up to 14.6. If I can get up to 14.7, I'll be thrilled. And I know that this stuff, I've having worked with it, I know what I can get away with. And as you go, you learn what you can and can't get away with. I've used Copyflex enough. I know that if I'm within a couple of tenths, it'll still mix. But if I'm like an entire ounce off, so if I only put 7 ounces or 6 ounces and 6 ounces of A and 7 ounces of B in, I know it's not going to cure. But if I do like 7.4 and 7.6, I know it'll be okay.
You've got a little drop off to the right side of
Oh, I know I'm making a mess. Oh no, I'm fully aware that I'm making a mess. You'll notice I've covered my work area with newspaper, and I will be washing the scale with acetone later. Well, this is food safe, so I'm not worried about it messing up my kitchen scale. Okay, Mix thoroughly. Get in there and mix it like crazy. Don't be shy. And make sure you're so scraping this. I'm scraping the sides, and I'm sticking this way. Make sure you got somewhere you can get way down into the bottom. Why do I feel like this is not? And you're going to see the white and the orange. You can see it's getting lighter because the white and the orange are mixing. So I'm going to mix it here for about a minute. And then now this is why I do the second. To make sure that I'm getting all the way down to the bottom and getting it completely mixed, I'm going to pour it off into a second container. And what you're going to see when you do this is you'll see streaks where it isn't mixed on the bottom. It's really, you're not going to be able to see them from out back there, but I can promise you they're up here. I can see them. So what you're doing is I'm dumping it so now all the stuff on the bottom is on the top. So I can make sure that the bottom gets mixed.
Mix again.
And you mix again, yeah. Exactly. I feel like this is not going to be enough. Maybe I did. Oh, I hope my math worked. Well, that's okay. And if I didn't, I'm not going to be too worried about it. Because here's the thing. Uncured silicone will stick to cured silicone. If you don't put, so if you're doing a 2-part mold and you don't put release agent in, it's all going to stick together. So if this doesn't, what?
Then you'll have a one-piece mold.
You have a one-piece mold. There are ways around it. It kind of sucks. So if I did the math wrong and I don't quite have enough, I can just order more and pour on top and it'll be fine. Because I feel like the last time I did this, I was running out of space. But that was like a year and a half ago. So I'm going to throw this out. Have a garbage can near you. I'm going to give it another mix. So now I know it's completely mixed. All right. Get my Legos out of the way here. So I got my box ready to go. So now I want to pour. One of the things you want to think about is air bubbles. You don't want to have a lot of air bubbles in your mold. Some rubber, this stuff is, this I know is really good. It outgasses any air bubbles that I've put in there from stirring it fairly well, because it has a longer pot time because it'll take 4 hours to cure. It has plenty of time for those air bubbles to kind of rise up through and go away. There are some things I can do to make that process easier, however. One, and the first thing, is I'm not going to pour from down here. I'm going to pour from up here. And as this stream comes down, air bubbles are going to pop on the way down. So I'm going to pour from way up here. You want to take your time because you want to let it flow into all the little cracks and nooks and crannies. I mean, I'm doing Legos, so. And it's, what? Oh, you're fine.
They're debating the plurality of Lego.
Oh, Lego, Legi, Legos, something like that. So what you're going to see is all these little air bubbles coming out of it. This isn't enough.
And you said you needed probably at least a 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch between your parts. And
well, for this, I know that one stud is plenty.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, one stud. Because I do so much work with this in Lego, I think in terms of studs.
Okay. And how about over top of the part? The same.
Same, about the same.
Okay, so you don't need thicker on the top.
Not for this. And if you're doing a 2-part mold, it's going to be thicker anyway.
Okay. Yeah. I'm thinking more in the terms of, like you're doing, making candy and
Yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah.
It doesn't have to have
Super,
an
yeah.
extra,
This table is not level. And this table is not level, which is also a problem. So I'm going to do this. And I can, so if I, you can, and the second thing you can do to get the air out is you can drop it a couple times and it'll shake the air up towards the top. Actually, this is, no, I guess I did do the math right, because this is exactly what it's supposed to look like.
Kate, I think I told you that I heard of somebody who was doing this and they built a shaking table.
Yeah, you can get a shaking table. The other thing I've seen, the really, really serious, like, garage kit guys do is buy a vacuum, like a food saver, and they will put this, or I've seen two things. I've seen them either do the pour and put it in the food saver, or I've seen them pull the vacuum on the silicone. Like, so take this, pull a vacuum on it to suck all the air out, and then pour it, which might be easier because, like, this is not going to fit in a, I don't think there's a food saver container big enough to fit this. But a food saver, if you want to get into vacuum chambers, a food saver is a really, really cheap way to do it. And now it's, since it's mixed silicone, this would actually pour off if I let it set up. I'm just getting the last little, I'm getting the dregs. So, all right. So yeah, you can shake it, and even if it's already, I can see air outgassing from it already. So again, Copyflex is designed to do that. This particular rubber is designed to outgas. So now it sits. I'm going to very carefully move it back here.
Is there a thing in there that you're making a mold of?
Legos.
You're making a mold of Legos?
Yes.
I thought they were the container.
No, yeah, that they are. Okay, so when it comes out, it's going to look like this. Through the magic of television. This is what it's going to end up. This is what I'm going to end up with, is a chunk of orange rubber that is dishwasher safe, that has little Legos, and this takes detail incredibly, incredibly well. If you look really close, it has actually taken where it says Lego is engraved on every stud. It's in there. So yeah, the magic of this is what it ends. This in 4 hours, I'm gonna have another one of these. Yay!
So are we going to get to try the samples made from it?
Just wait.
Just
Just you wait. All right. Once you get that far, I just gotta walk over here and grab a paper towel, wipe my hands off a little. Once you get that far, now you want to make your parts. You want to make your casts. Resin is plastic. Comes in two parts, resin, catalyst. Some are 1-to-1, some are not. Most resins are not 1-to-1. The stuff I mostly use for my work is craft grade. This is stuff you get at Michael's. It's called Cast and Craft. I do not like Easy Cast. It's 1-to-1. I can never get it to cure right. Believe it or not, this is like 10-to-1 or 12-to-1 or 20-to-1, depending on how big your cast is. I've had better luck with this stuff. This is craft grade. If you're looking for something industrial grade, if you're looking for something to do parts with that need to be under stress tolerances, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know as much about resin as I do about the silicone. Because really what it comes down to is, for what I do in this hobby, this stuff is fine. I'm making jewelry for costumes. I can get away with using the cheap stuff most of the time. You'll see polyethylene, or polyurethane, polyester, epoxy. They all have different mix ratios and different characteristics. You really need to know what is your part going to be used for? What kind of tolerances do you need? Do you need really exact, or can you fudge? How much stress is it going to be under? How much, is there going to be what kind of forces are involved? I mean, there are all kinds of different alternatives. Another alternative that I didn't talk about, it is a resin. You can get more along fiberglass type, Bondo. I have cast costume parts out of Bondo. If I'm doing something where it's opaque, like I did a headband and I needed 6 identical pieces, they didn't need to be clear because I was spray painting them chrome anyway. So I made them. My dad and I went down to his shop, and we mixed up a batch of Bondo, and it worked great. So think outside the box. I could see like keycaps and things like that. Bondo's pretty strong. It's car. I mean, do you guys know what Bondo is? Auto body filler? Yeah, it's body filler for cars. Yeah, it's body filler for cars. It can take an awful, awful lot. So if you've got what?
What do you use for release agent on?
So I bought, in my case, I was using the latex. I was using, I don't think I have any, do I? Oh, here, I actually have one. Oh, I was using this. This is one of the Bondo pieces. I'll pass it around, actually, and it sands really well. This is, I made a spare just to have. So I'll pass this around. Bondo sands really well. It shapes really well. It takes paint really well. Again, it's made for cars. So I used a little bit of just the cast and craft release agent. I don't even know if I needed to do that, even with the latex. With the silicone, you'll be surprised at how much it does not stick. But it's the same release agent that you would buy to make a 2-part mold, you could use in your molds to make it release. It's just, but you buy something called mold release. This is called mold release conditioner from Cast and Craft, and it worked. Like I never had a problem and I did a whole pile of those.
So how long is the silicone mold good for before it starts to?
I don't know. I have not. I will let you know when I break one. I did the Umu one that we did at school for the glass bottle. I did 20 hot sugar pulls out of, and it still looks really good. And we're talking like 300-degree caramel sugar poured in and poured back out. So I mean, it was not an insignificant amount of stress on the silicone, and it was the 20th bottle looked as good as the first. So yeah, Bondo. Yeah, Bondo is like I can't say enough about Bondo. It is an amazing material for making things. And if you want clear, you can go with I have the clear with me. If anybody wants to play with it with some of the latex. The other thing is this stuff has a shelf life. So if we go outside and play with this, I'm not going to make any guarantees that it actually cures, because this has been sitting around my house it's been sitting in my workshop for a while.
So when you have the stuff with the crazy differences in ratio, how are you measuring that? How close do you have to get?
Again, depends on the material. So if you're going to use, what I can tell you, Bondo I eyeball. And my experience with Bondo is, unfortunately, my father was helping me. My father does antique cars. My father has a 55 Chevy Cameo pickup. He has a 68 Mustang convertible, and he's a 72 Skylark convertible. My dad is like amazing with Bondo. So it's basically, he's like, it's about this much and about this much, because he's been doing this for like 60 years. So and what I do know is the more catalyst with Bondo you add, the faster it gets hard. If you're going to use the cast and craft, I know that you need more catalyst than you think. It's going to say on the back here, single layer casting. If your cast is, an 1/8 of an inch of thick, you need X number of drops of because where's the catalyst? Catalyst comes in a little tiny bottle. So 15 drops of this to an ounce of this.
Okay, so you're not having to do like measuring?
No. This is going to be, resin is an exothermic reaction. Resin gets hot. That's how it cures. Yeah, what?
I was just saying it's like epoxy.
Yeah, epoxy basically is. Yeah, Bondo gets hot. Again, this is so. That's how it cures. It's literally curing from the inside out. It's making its own heat to cure. So the more of this you add to this, the faster it's going to cure, the hotter it's going to get. Thickness, how thick is your part, how big is your part, affects how fast you want it to cure. On the back of the Cast and Craft bottle, it actually says, layer thickness. So single layer, if it's an 1/8 of an inch cast, you need 15 drops of catalyst. If it's a 1/4 inch, you need 8. If it's 1 inch, you need 4. It lies. Usually takes about twice as much to 3 times as much. The worst that's going to happen is if you put too much catalyst in this stuff with the Cast and Craft. The worst that's going to happen is your cast is going to crack. It'll crack in the mold because it heats too fast, and then you just throw it out. And when you let it cure, you throw it out. You try again with less catalyst. Resin is, like the silicone, it's like ironclad. If you do the measurement, it's going to work. Resin requires a lot of practice. So you have to figure out what material you want, and then you have to accept that your first maybe cast or two you're not going to get perfect results the first time. You need to practice. This is, again, this is something I could do an 8-hour workshop on and still not teach you everything you need to know. You need to practice. You just need to get out there and try it. Again, so I kind of already went through this. I forgot to switch the slide. Heat-safe disposable containers. Do not use plastic tops. You end up with pink resin all over your friend's washing machine. I'm sorry, Duncan. Still. No wax. So don't eat the wax-coated paper cups. Because the wax is going to get into the resin and it's going to affect the chemical reaction. I like to use aluminum cans. But make sure they're really, really clean. I cut the tops off and I run them through the dishwasher. Again, you need disposable mixing sticks. You don't want to be trying to, resin you're never going to get off. Mold release if you're doing a 2-part mold, or even if you're doing a 1-part mold, I'll use mold release just because I'm paranoid. I won't for this because you don't need mold releases for candy. And if you're going to do a 2-part mold, you can use rubber bands to hold it together. Or duct tape, or you need something really strong.
One more question on 2-part molds.
Yeah.
You gotta leave a hole somewhere to pour.
Yeah, that's something else you can do with the clay.
How big a hole do you need to?
It depends on the size of the part.
Okay.
Because a bigger part, you're going to want a bigger hole, because otherwise you're going to be standing there for 20 minutes pouring this very thin stream of resin in, and you're going to cure.
Would you recommend having like a second hole for air to come out as you pour?
A bigger one might need that,
Okay.
yeah. It depends on the size of the part. I've seen people get away without it, but if you're doing like a joystick base or something, yeah, but the problem with that is you got to figure out where to put the hole that your resin's not going to leak out.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so because if you put the hole on the side, you're going to end up, I'm pouring, and the resin's rolling down the table and onto the carpet. A word about resin is it is not as safe as playing with the silicone. This is why I'm not doing it in here. Eye protection, disposable gloves, and if you have breathing problems, a respirator. And I mean a respirator, not a little surgeon's mask. I mean, like, when I did this with the good stuff, I had the big with the cartridges. With the Cast and Craft, you don't really need that because as long as you're outside. If this was super toxic, they couldn't sell it at Michael's. Anything you get at like Michael's, at Joann's, at Hobby Lobby is going to be pretty safe because they can't sell it otherwise. If you go out online and you start getting into the high-end resins, even the Bondo, and you should have a respirator anyway if you're going to start sanding this stuff, because I don't care what this is. If you inhale the dust, it's not good for you. So a respirator is just a good thing to have. I always do this outside, or if you have a very, very well ventilated garage. If you have, I guess I've met guys who do this for garage kits, and they actually put vent hoods in their garage to do this with. And again, some are more dangerous with others. Craft grade, you're pretty good. Bondo, more higher end ones, maybe not so much. Like I said, well ventilated area, I'm going to harp on that. Clean, make sure the molds are clean. Make sure the molds have mold release in them. Make sure your 2-part mold is together with tape or rubber bands. Duct tape works really well. Gorilla tapes works really, because that's what we ended up doing. We were poured what we thought was going to be a 1-part mold for the glass bottle, but it was shaped like this. It was a Fanta bottle, and we found out we couldn't pull it out all the way without basically cutting the whole thing almost in half, which is another way to make a 2-part mold. You take a knife and you can cut it in half. But it's a lot easier to mold it that way because because what happens is it doesn't, if you don't cut it right, it slides, and it does weird things. I probably should have grabbed that last, but I didn't think about that at the end of the school year.
The seam lines probably would look kind of odd too.
What?
The seam lines would look a little odd.
Yeah, the seam lines do look at, no, because I can tell you some of the glass bottles, like, well, if you didn't line it up right, but nobody's going to look from on stage, nobody cares. But so if you really want a 2-part mold, don't just do it as a 1-part and cut it with a knife. Bad call. Mix it, pour it, let it cure. Take up to 24 to 48 hours. If it doesn't, like I know like cast and craft sometimes will have a hard time curing, like some of the stuff I made was sticky. Heat helps, do it on a hot day. If it's not curing or if it's still sticky, I drove around with a week with little Iron Man resin parts in the back seat of my car. Sitting in the school parking lot when my car gets to be about 90. Works really well. Did this solidify already? I am not going to do resin.
Suggestion for the cutting a mold in half to make a 2-part mold. Use a wire like you would for cheese.
You have to have you'd have to put a lot of force on it. It does not cut easily.
Okay.
No, we had a pretty good knife and it still wasn't cutting. Couple other things I've seen done. If you really, really want to get into this, you can buy a pressure vessel. It's called a pressure pot. You can get it at Harbor Freight. You take the cast, the mold, and then you put it in the pressure and you pressurize it to like 1020 psi. It shoves all the air into the middle of the cast. I don't have that equipment. I'm not that super serious about it, but if that's something you really want to get into, you just Google pressure casting or pressure pots, or you go to like Resin Addicts. There's like a forum called Resin Addicts. It's great. That's where you go. And the other thing to remember is your parts are not going to probably come out perfect. You are going to have to sand them. You are going to have to polish them. Wet sanding is a great, great thing. Polyester resins will be a little tacky on the exposed parts. You can put a little nail polish on them. You can let them sit longer. There is a finishing spray you can buy, like a clear nail polish seems to work for me. Or if, like in my case, that was where I was going to glue them onto the dress anyway, so I really didn't care. So to cast, it's really easy. So this is Jell-O. So, but yeah, so you just take your material, you fill your mold, except in my case, my material has become solid because it's freezing cold in here, and that's not a problem. Wow. No, I'm impressed. Usually in my kitchen, it doesn't get solid this fast. Okay.
Put it in the microwave.
Put it in the microwave. While I'm doing this, are there any questions? Because I know I'm running short on time. Dagan.
Resins, how would you color them?
You can buy special. You have to. You buy special dyes. It depends on the resin. Buy the dye that goes with that brand of resin. And yes, you can color them. And buy the dye that goes with that brand.
You were saying you're using Jell-O. How are you mixing that as per the box directions?
No, it's a box of Jell-O and it's 2 extra packets of unflavored gelatin. King of random. I totally got this off the internet. That's better. Yeah, yes. No, feel free to ask me questions because I can pretty much do this in my sleep. Oh, yeah, move this. I can do this in my sleep.
I know you're not a resin expert, but as an alternative to doing an expensive run of injection molding, resin casting has a lot of appeal for, I think, a lot of our projects, obviously.
Just gonna do it the hard way.
durability is an issue. If I wanted to make a two-piece part, I'd probably want to tap screws. Do you have any idea where I would start with that?
I don't.
If there is even anything rugged enough? 'Cause
Yeah,
it
that
sounds
I
like
don't
these-
know.
Okay.
So you can see it just pours. It's not working like I wanted it to, but that's okay.
On something like that, could you put the screw in the part?
You might, yeah, you theoretically you probably could, because the screw, if you put enough mold release on it, the screw isn't going to stick to the silicone.
Yeah.
You couldn't, I wouldn't put it in the resin part, but you would have to make the mold with that in mind.
Right. But I guess I'm kind of worried about, you think about a lot of people would use something like an ABS plastic for a really durable device, like a game controller.
Yeah, like,
right?
yeah, these are, yeah, I think Legos are ABS.
And I'm wondering if resins are typically more brittle.
I think, yeah, resin is going to be more brittle than ABS plastic, absolutely.
I'd like to see.
Okay, I'm just going to do a couple of these. I will cast more later.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna still want to wrap this up. I'll deal with this later. I'll deal with you later.
Okay.
You have failed me. You have failed me, little ball, little.
So it just needs
What?
another chemist, is
What?
you're saying.
Like a live demonstration.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to
But
see-
anyway, through the magic of television, it solidifies into little things that look like this. Anybody want some blueberry gummy Legos? Oh, geez, I don't know if they'll be cherry later.
Enough for everyone?
I didn't expect this many people to be interested in this. I figured there'd be like,
What size bricks are there? We'll split them.
You each get one stud.
yeah, you each have, yeah, basically. Here, you know, I'm gonna set them here. And I'm gonna do exactly what I do when I do food demos at school.
Put down stick one.
Yeah, I'm gonna set this down, and I'm gonna walk away, and I'm gonna let you all have Thunderdome.
So you're basically turning your students into Hunger Games.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we have the Hunger Games in my classroom. It's kind of awesome. Any other questions?
When,
Oh.
sorry.
Nope.
Just on the unmixed spillage. When
I'll wipe it down with acetone.
So it's really the same.
Yeah, yeah, I'll just wipe it down with acetone.
Because that zeroes out, you could even like put some tin foil over that. before
Yeah,
you start
yeah, I
mixing.
probably should have done that.
Okay.
I didn't even think, I didn't 100% plan this. It'd be stepping on the Lego. Oh, geez, Chris.
So if you were going to make a lot of parts, and I'm thinking like Charles and stuff like that, how does the cost actually compare to the 3D printing?
I don't know how it costs to 3D print something.
This is a lot cheaper.
Okay.
If I wanted to make 10 of something, it costs 10 times as much as making one of something. If I'm 3D printing it.
Yeah.
If I want to make 10 of something, I make the mold one time. I should be able to reuse it 10
Yeah,
times.
at least.
Then obviously the
Depending
scale-
on what resin you use versus how much filament. I don't know how much filament is. So.
Well, the stuff that I'm doing is in shapeways, and so it's
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. The young gentleman back here.
How much does this Bondo cost?
The last time I don't. That is a very good question because my father, when I use Bondo, I get it from my dad.
It's free.
It's free, yeah. I want to say probably $25-30 for the kit, and I guess that was $25 worth of silicone. That was £1 pound.
Yeah,
The Umu's about comparable. I think we paid for what we bought. We bought four four trial sets, and it cost us $100.
And also, the bigger the volume you buy for the project, the cheaper
Right.
it's going to be.
Yeah.
relatively.
Yeah. If I'd have bought 5 or 6 pounds of Copy Flex, I would have paid a lot less.
I've never used Bondo. I imagined it as more of almost a putty for things like side panels. Is it pourable?
It's not really pourable. That's the only difference. Is
No,
Bondo's not.
It's like a paste.
It's like a paste.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pourable. It's not pourable, but
So you kind of push it in?
you kind of push it in. Yeah, I use popsicle sticks to kind of push it into the mold. Like I said, that piece I passed around, I did with Bondo.
Yeah, I mean, the people who work in auto body shops, they use like plastic spatulas or something
Yeah.
like to spread them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what
Yeah, it smushes down really well.
Okay.
And then if you get air bubbles, you can take a little tiny bit of Bondo and you just kind of fill it in and then sand it back down. And I've had to do that before. My hands are all sticky. Rochelle.
Mold trays.
The what?
Mold trays, like ice cube trays, all mold trays.
Yeah, you could use. I mean, that's kind of what you could make ice in this. I could make ice.
But the stuff that you pull, that you would pour, can you put that in the mold?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. As a matter of fact, the one I didn't I bought this. I did not make this one. I bought this one from the Lego store, and it's an ice cube tray.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you can totally, yeah, the Jell-O works for, you can do all kinds of crazy stuff with it. I do the Jell-O in my classroom with my kids. We just pour it into a pan. We just pour it into a cake pan and cut it up. You could, because it'll stack and stick to itself. Yeah, it's just like working with Jell-O, only it's really, really strong Jell-O.
I got one more. Could you go to the store and get some Jell-O and pour it into that?
You have to, so that Jell-O, it's not just regular Jell-O. It's a cup, half a cup of water, quarter cup of corn syrup, packet of Jell-O, 2 packs of unflavored Knox gelatin. And there's a special way, there's a video where I learned how to do this, the gummy thing, that you have to mix it, and you have to mix it a certain way so you don't get a lot of foam, and so you have to start with it cold. You're working with it's less making Jell-O and more making candy.
Yeah, you said it was gummy. That's the Jell-O kind of threw me off. So when Michael and I were trying to tear it apart, it was like.
It's a gummy bear. Yeah. It's a homemade gummy bear.
Yeah, it's really tough to tear apart.
And if you look really close, you can see the little gummies have Lego written on them. So the candy takes an amazing amount of detail too. Yeah, go ahead, please. I'm going to make more. So please eat them.
One thing that I've seen that just struck me is you can actually melt gummy bears.
Yes, you can.
And pour them.
Yeah, you can.
Into the mold rather than making it with the Jell-O.
Yeah.
So if you get a big
you can get a double
gummy bear
boiler.
batch.
Yeah, do it in a double boiler.
Yeah.
But I know how to do that.
Because I've seen people making gummy bear,
Ninja-
gummy bear art in
Yeah,
a variety of ways.
that's exactly what you do. James.
Say you're doing a larger part.
Yeah.
Do they make a higher viscosity silicone that you can actually brush on?
That you can what?
That you can actually brush on?
One of the things, I've never seen higher viscosity, but one of the things I've seen people do, if you've got a lot of detail, you can mix a small amount and take a brush and do like a skim coat on your piece and then let that set to make sure it gets into all the little nooks and crannies, and then you can pour on top of that.
So you can make multiple batches?
You can make multiple passes, yeah. Like I said, uncured silicone sticks to cured silicone. If I hadn't had enough to do that, like for a second I thought I didn't, I can order more Copy Flex, I can pour it on top and it'll stick.
Okay, I've got a project in mind, but it would take so much silicone out on the edge, take like a gallon on the edge to reach the peak.
What you'd almost have to do.
Well, do it like a chest plate, okay? Say a chest plate, for example, you put it down, you go to pouring it, you don't want to pour a big old chunk of silicone. You want to do it to where you can stair step it back.
There's a size kind of diminishing returns that you hit with this technique. So you're talking like a chest plate,
that size.
So
at that point, there are better ways. There are better ways to make armor than resin.
I've seen molds like that where they brush it on and then they put that into plaster.
There's
to
that
hold
too.
The rest of the shape, and then they remove it, and then the plaster holds that silicone
Well, that's what
mold.
I'm saying.
So without having to
I
do
was
a
asking
ton of
about making a
silicone.
small layer to go
Right.
over it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can pour plaster Paris
Right.
on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, so I've never made anything ginormous like that. If I'm getting into armor and ginormous stuff like that, then I'm getting in. There are other techniques that I use.
Vacuum forming may be
Yeah, that's when you get into vacuum form. That's when you get into Warbla. That's when you get into thermoplastics. Nerd. Questions, comments, concerns? All right, I really need to go wash my hands, so thank you guys.